All right, I want to thank everyone for coming here to hear this proposition, and I would thank the member of government for giving his talk, but he already thanked himself. I'd like to thank the leader of opposition for his splendid remarks on this, and I'd like to cut right to the matter. What we are talking about today is a bill designed to undermine the moral values of this country. This country was founded on the premise that the people would rise up themselves, that people support themselves. The American dream is that you own a home that you bought. Not that I own a home that Uncle Sam bought, that I live in a home owned by my uncle. No, I own my own home with my own rules and rights. If we allow these people to co-opt ourselves into having a publicly subsidized home ownership system, what we allow them to do is get into the very homes that we have held so precious and dear. We are allowing government to get its liberal, conniving hands into all of our private livelihood. We are allowing an invasion of the highest degree. It is in our very Bill of Rights that the government shall not be able to demand quarter of us, nor shall we take it from them that they may later claim it as their own. So I say that no, we should oppose this bill. I'd like to hit off a few quick topics. I've already talked about self-reliance, but I'd also like to talk about the issue of government ownership regulation, and then I'm going to hit off on some of the government's points here and see if I can't take a few walls down. So, what we're talking about here is government subsidies of home ownership. Now, we've seen this happen before. We've seen what the government does with federal subsidies for colleges and universities, which everybody thought it was a great idea at the time, that we would fund education and thus stimulate the economy by encouraging more people to go to college. What this has actually done is made universities and colleges dependent upon the government, dependent upon them for funding, which they cannot get anywhere else, because that money is being paid in taxes to the government, so the people do not have that money to give to the universities themselves. The government has become a middleman, and a middleman who has absolute control and authority, and has thus used that control and authority to exert its will over the universities. We have seen it happen there. Let us not see it happen in our very homes. Move into regulation. We want to say that if there is any problem with our banking system, with our financial systems at all, regulation is the appropriate response. And I do not mean regulation as in we force the banks to give people loans just because we feel they deserve it. No, if you deserve a loan, the bank will give it to you. That is the principle on which our system is built. I'm saying regulation so that we have loans that do not exploit people, loans that are not designed so as to sucker people in, loans that are not backed by Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac with enormously low interest rates that are unfortunately not fixed interest rates. And I'm also talking about regulations that will improve our financial markets in such a way as to allow them to maintain bubble growth. What I'm saying here is that we need to make sure our markets are regulated in such a way so that the growth in loan availability or in home prices doesn't happen in such a way as to mislead the American people into thinking that they can buy homes that are outside their price range. These are the means by which we shall secure our people their houses. Nothing more than this is required of the government. Everything else shall come from the people to themselves. I'd like to hit off a few of your points here. You mentioned stimulating the economy, and you used the broken glass fallacy, that by spending money, we make money, which is not so. You make money by having people spend what they want, by people who buy what they want, what makes them happy. It is about people getting what they want. That is what an economy should be about. Not about people getting what the government wants them to have. This is not about the government telling you what the American dream is. This is not about the government telling you what kind of home you can buy. This is about you telling the world, the government, your local construction workers, and bank what kind of home you want. What if my American dream is to ride on a motorcycle from motel to motel, but I have to pay taxes supporting other guys who just want to live on one boring suburban plot the rest of their lives? What then can you say to me, government? What then? I want to talk about stimulation of growth. We say that we're going to grow the economy, that we're going to build homes for people. I'd like to remind the government that the majority of the homes that have ever been built have been built privately, that when the government attempts to build homes, even on the most massive of scales, we look at Europe, for example, in the post-war era, we see that the most homes were not built by the Eastern governments with their communist mechanisms, but they were instead built by the international banks, by the banks that we set up in order to run a private organization that would fund the people. And the beauty of this system is that the government set these banks up, put these banks in the... Yes?
We never said that the government would actually be building the houses.
Well, obviously you won't build the houses yourself. Well, perhaps you might eventually. Noted. What I'm saying, though, is the government is paying for these houses nonetheless, in effect building them. I mean, heck, if those guys are union contract, they might as well be government workers for the rate that they get things done at. I want to say, though, that we look at the international banks. These were banks set up by the government in order to make loans. But these were not banks controlled by the government. So these were not banks which the government was obligated to support. These were banks which were set up and then let to run themselves. They were set up in the way a stimulus package should be set up, allowed to launch and go into the private industry world, not added as another arm of the government designed to become like a large octopus invading your livelihood in every manner possible. No, this is something that is set up and allowed to fly off, free and independently, in an open society fashion. You talk about the American dream, and I've said before that the dream of owning a home is not, by definition, the American dream. The American dream is centered around moral upstandingness, about standing on your own 2 feet. And I'd also like to say that the bureaucracy of subsidizing homes would be in so many ways detraction from the American dream. It would be so many ways distracting from the happiness of the people. How can a people be happy when the paperwork is so conflicting, so confusing? Our system as a whole is already too bureaucratic for people to enjoy, and we need to be moving away from that. As a government, we need to realize that the government itself cannot defeat bureaucracy. It must turn over certain obligations to the private sector if bureaucracy is to be effectively thwarted. I'd also like to talk about education and stability. You guys use some interesting correlations there. Unfortunately, most of those correlations have to do with high income. You talk about how people who live in nicer homes are wealthier, they have better incomes, they have better educations, their children pay more attention in school. All these wonderful things about how the crime is lower. But the fact is, these are all symptomatic of one thing: being rich. Being wealthy, having lots of money. Money is what is making all these good things happen. And you want to subvert this by taking the money and moving it into the government hands instead of being in the people's hands where it belongs, where it does the most good. You want to take this system, this beautiful system that we have laid out, in which everyone is advancing themselves, in which we are bringing ourselves forward into the future. It's in a future where more people can be wealthy, rather than a future where everyone has the same amount of wealth as they do at this point in time, a future where everyone has more wealth than they do at this point in time. While yes, we can't have a system where I got 5 seconds. We can't have a system where everyone has the same amount of wealth. We can't have a system where everyone is richer tomorrow than they were today. And that is what I stand for.